From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Let's see how fast I can say this. Pretty fast. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Jen.
You are. We have guests. We have two hosts of the 91 Octane podcast. They are, their podcast tends to be based on news about cars and the car scene. They're based out of Southern California. They also are involved with various types of builds and getting into racing and making all kinds of bad mistakes that we love to see everybody get raced in. And with that, we have Randy Choson and John Perez. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
All right, very well. We have done this podcasting thing for a little bit. My intros are probably the weakest part besides my mechanical ability. So just in case everybody's not familiar with your podcast and yourselves, could you just give a brief introduction to yourself? Let's go with Randy. He's on the top of the screen from my side. So Randy, you get to go first.
Sure. So my name is Randy Choson. Thank you, Garage Heroes in Training listeners. I am born and bred in Detroit, Michigan, of course, that is. So I grew up in a environment that was very much muscle oriented, but I grew up with a taste for the JDM scene. My family's a Toyota family, thus it was very much a outlier amongst that world that we lived in out there in Michigan. And having moved to California, I very much got to swim in the buffet that I enjoy, which is every type of car out here. And so with that said, I met John and we decided to do this automotive based podcast, originally with the idea of kind of playing off of that Detroit versus LA thing, but then it's eventually evolved into what it is today.
What do you think, John? What are you doing? Can we blame Randy for all this?
I think for an accurate depiction of the car, my car upbringing, you can look at the original Fast and the Furious. That was pretty much my life up like 16 to 22. And then it kind of dropped off. And my professional career took over, cubicle life started, and kind of was absent from the car world for a while until I met Randy. And we spent a lot of time, a lot of hours that we should have been working just talking about cars. And naturally, after he left that company, I was still there. Later on, he kind of calls me up and he says, we're kind of sick of the cubicle life. Let's delve into our passions. And we knew we like cars. So he said, let's start an automotive podcast. And I said, I'm there. Absolutely. And that's kind of how it kicked off and really reintegrated us back into the car world, which was originally more street cars, show cars. But then we met Jaime, we met the NASA crew, we met tons of racers, and I hit my first track day, and it was all downhill from there. So it's been 91 Octane since.
So why do you call it 91 Octane?
Well, there's a few reasons why we decided on that number. One, we wanted to be focused on sort of the grassroots side and the accessibility of racing in the car world, because a lot of times, especially when we were younger, even considering our first meet, it seemed intimidating to go to a car meet, to go racing, to take that first step, right? So we wanted a name that really kind of made things seem obtainable, which 91 Octane being the highest octane that is available at any gas station was sort of hearkened to that. And then also Randy and I are divided by the 91 freeway. So the 91 freeway is in between. I take the 91 freeway to his house every Friday to record the podcast. So there, it's a bit symbolic.
And to add to that, yes, 91 Octane is the best Octane we can get in California. I'm aware, obviously, having grown up in Detroit, you get 93 out in the Midwest since you guys have different access to, I think, the Texas gas pipes,
Yep.
whereas we're completely different. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
understood. So, let me see. S- Do you guys, I know you guys do the news, but you guys get behind the seat too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you
I
get
mean,
by the steering wheel, sorry.
yeah.
They get behind the seat with each other.
Yeah,
That's a
behind the
different
seat,
podcast.
yeah.
I
What
caught
was
what you
that?
were putting down.
Yeah,
Way
sorry.
Yeah,
different
but yeah,
podcast.
absolutely. I mean, it's sort of been the natural evolution of things. You sort of exhaust options. And I started with autocross. Kind of that was the first step.
Gateway drug.
Kinda, yeah, driving in parking lots and I actually, my first car was a Kia Rio, believe it or not. And I really caught the bug when I started taking, I guess, driving theory a little more seriously and starting to apply that in practice. And then that kind of brought more sense to what I was doing and started beating cars that were a lot faster than a tiny hatchback with 100 horsepower. So that kind of inspired, moving into track driving. I had Jaime as my NASA coach, and he made sure that, and he fostered any addiction that I caught on at the track, and moved on to the E36 platform, and been trying to navigate my way through NASA since.
E36, you said?
Yes, E36.
Okay. Well, how about you, Randy?
So for myself, John is pulling me into the track world, I would say. As he had mentioned, we started this podcast. He had a Kia Rio. I had a 98 Honda Prelude. So very much not necessarily race car platforms, you could say. And I've added an S2000 into the mix as far as my car stable. So with the purchase of that car, John really tried to drag me into the track scene, and he has gotten me to go. I am a father of 3 primarily, so that's my first job. So
Yes.
I have to balance this track life thing with, parenthood and that struggle. But nonetheless, I've gone to some of the local track events. I'd never started with autocross at all. My first real track experience was at Las Vegas Speedway. They did the exotics racing stuff where you rent a Ferrari and you do that whole thing. I paid a ton of money for 10 minutes of track time, $500 for about 10 or 15 minutes of 5 laps around the track in a Ferrari 458. So that was my first real experience. And then I've taken the S2000 a few times to Auto Club Speedway, which is a NASCAR track out here, and drove through the inner portion of the NASCAR loop.
Okay.
So you've got an S2000 now, which makes me very jealous.
Me too.
I know. John, you're E36. We've been talking parts already, so we're working this out.
Yeah.
Any other toys on the horizon, or is that the stable for right now? We're trying to control ourselves against our better judgment.
We try, and I know you guys can relate. You try to control, but you're always window shopping, and that means that you've always got a hand on the wallet, so to speak. I do have an E92 M3 that's sort of my street car. I have a truck that I use as my tow rig. I'm eyeing a potential C6 Corvette, but I'm really trying to temper that. I'm trying to keep it cool on my purchases. I don't know about Randy.
For me, I recently sold my Prelude to my younger brother-in-law, and so I have a family I have 3 kids and my wife and I. So I need a 5-seater. So I don't know if you guys have suggestions for an ideal 5-seater. I have one in mind, but I'd be curious to hear if you guys have thoughts on a good, maybe hybrid daily family car, 5-seater type of platform.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I don't usually think about cars that large. I'm a small car guy.
Think about family
about-
cars.
How about 2.5 Miatas?
So one is towing the other. That's
Yeah.
genius. That's genius.
Perfect.
What could go wrong there? That's not a problem. I don't know. How big are the kids so far?
2, 6, and 7. So I've been eyeing an IS300. I was literally just looking online at one. As John has mentioned, it's hard to avoid window shopping thanks to the internet. So you're always
Sure.
looking at stuff out there. But I think IS300 is probably queued up. It's a nice little M3 rival too, so to speak, the lesser brother, the M3 Junior, maybe. I don't know if you could call it that, but that's something but I haven't fully committed yet because there isn't a need for me. I don't have a long commute to work. I don't drive very much anywhere, so I do currently own a Honda Odyssey as my second vehicle.
Well, are we keeping the Odyssey?
Yeah. So it gives me a lot of options by having such a large vehicle.
So why do you need another large vehicle when you already have one? Let's talk sports cars, shall we?
Bill, preach.
You get the right you get the right tool for the job. You've got one for that job.
Yes.
Now you go get another tool for the job.
And
Randy.
I'm not fully committed to track life yet. So to that point, it's
But it's only a matter of time, right?
So
Yeah.
We know this.
So right.
So wait, just wait, Jonathan. I got this covered for you. Hold on, Randy. Let's talk practicality. Let's talk
Sure.
how to get this done. The thing that's holding you back is you are half my age, maybe. Here's where we gotta take you. Okay. This is what we do. We go to a nice track day, right? You bring the S2000. You're on the West Coast. It's almost always sunny. Don't do the June gloom. Make sure it's one of those nice, 70-degree days. Beautiful day. Perfect. You sign up your significantly better half for HPDE 1. You make sure she gets a really good coach. Here's where you see where we're going here.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Okay. You get the CFO of the family involved in the sport. She'll be sitting there saying, why do we have this Honda Odyssey when we could go out and have another M3 like your friend John over here? This is the situation that you need to work towards. This is how your spring should go. Actually, you guys still have good weather. You could get this done this year. Let's start talking about November, shall we?
Interesting point. Very interesting point.
So we have we have John going down the on his track journey at the moment. Where does Shosen think about it right now?
So I committed to a sim rig setup.
Oh,
so
nice.
I have a
That's good.
entry-level sim rig setup, and that's my fatherly commitment to enjoying my hobby, but also equalizing my time. There you go. Yeah. Oh, play seat also. Yes. Or next level racing, right? Next level racing.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that's right. So I have the fold-up one. So space is a little bit more limited where I am at. So that allows for like a nice balance. I actually did just order a PS5 today. Surprise,
Nice.
surprise, John.
How do you find them?
Was it still $50,000 to get one?
It's you have to buy a bundle. So they did. I follow people on Twitter because Gran Turismo really sold me a week or two ago. So I'm debating on whether to still sell this thing during the holidays or whatever, since Gran Turismo is some time from now. But nonetheless, I've got a PC. I've got next level racing chair with the Logitech G29. Or G9, 29 wheel.
29.
So entry level, I'd say entry level.
How are we doing on
setup.
pedals? What are we doing for pedals?
Just the stock pedals, nothing crazy.
Okay.
Really purely entry level, just to get my feet wet.
No worries.
I still play on that PC plus a PS3.
Oh wow.
I skipped the console generation because my kids were babies at the
Is
time.
your N64 didn't have a suitable game for you, or?
Ironically, I still have my Nintendo NES.
Oh,
My
wow.
original one that
Wow.
my mom bought for me in
Wow.
'89. So that's here with me now, also in California. So I'm a little bit of a retro gamer too. If
Okay.
that's a nice way of putting it, right?
I know we had to wait for you to finish your Pong game before we started the podcast today. So. John,
So with
how do you
kids-
deal with this guy, man? The N64 gamer, I tell you.
So
I
with
have a lot
kids,
to
we
teach
have
Yeah.
with kids we have you in the wings at the moment. So until
Yes, yeah,
until
that's
things
what you could say.
progress and keep going.
Right.
So
Right.
so as your car journey goes and your podcast, you pretty much focus on discussing the news that's going on that's out there with track events. Are you guys building at anything?
Is that for John or myself? Sorry.
Oh, both of you.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the podcast is designed more as I think it's more of like a radio show,
Okay.
where
Yes.
we do start the show with sort of current events and news that includes, time attack stuff and club racing, but then also covers just the car news in general. Really, any major events we'll try to cover as quickly as we can. But then we'll also have we have segments like the Dro Report, which is we pick 3 cars and decide which one we want to put through a demolition derby, which one we would rent, and which one we would prefer to own. We'll go head to head with like car trivia. We have different segments of that way. We try to get creative with some of the ways that we discuss car information, and then of course covering our journeys. Both being as honest as we can about our successes and our failures to kind of give everybody a good snapshot of what life in the car world is like, right? I mean, Instagram kind of has us believe that everything is rosy all the time for everybody, and that's not the case.
What?
So at least not me. Sorry, Bill. I guess it's rosy for Bill.
No.
So we just want to try to give as honest of a snapshot from that perspective, especially since that's where I'm at most of the time. And then also Randy kind of talking about his dad life and being a dad, in the car world and what that's like. So those are the differing perspectives that we try to inject into the podcast while speaking about our journeys.
So
in terms of the,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, you're the
in
guest.
terms of the builds, my first car, like I said, was a Kia Rio. There is zero support for that car, so I did what I could. Shout out to Evila Motorsports for helping me with some of the suspension components. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty much stock, which sort of helped me. That was kind of my first. It was my first taste of track life, and having no power and battling a stock car, I think taught me a lot about track driving.
Sure.
But my love has always been for BMW. I'm definitely a Beamer head. So I started building an E36 M3, and the idea was to buy it, get it done in 3 months, and I would immediately start my track journey, go through HPD 1, 2, 3, 4, time attack. And quickly that was not the case. It was hard to find time to work on the car in my garage. I ended up buying a house somewhere in between there. But then COVID hit, and it was a blessing in disguise. Although it's made us miserable for a really long time, I started working from home, which meant that I now no longer had to commute 3 hours a day. I could wrench on my car 3 hours a day. So in about a 2-month span, I might have touched every nut and bolt on that car, with the exception of maybe the dash and the motor not coming out. Everything else pretty much had my hands on it. Finished it up probably second to last day of heading to Big Willow. And on the shakedown, on the first turn, I lose control of the car, end up in a ditch, lose my front splitter and the front bumper, and that was the end of my day. Yeah, it was an extreme high to an extreme low immediately, but you live and you learn, and from then on it's been nothing but exciting.
So I don't know if it's a compliment to you guys or not, but I actually dropped like 4 podcasts that were all like my car news podcast just because you guys covered it in a way that was a little more fun. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Sorry, I had to jump in there, Miss Jen. You're up.
So, do you have any car-related goals or dreams or to-dos, bucket list items? As we start with Randy, aside from the family car.
You already have that covered.
Other
That is
cars.
definitely a bucket list.
The fun family car.
The
Actually, I
fun
should
for
have
an Odyssey.
predicated that.
It needs a
Yes.
family car with a wang on it.
Right, exactly.
Splitter.
Lower,
Yeah.
5-speed.
We could put that
One of those
Odyssey
pilots,
engine.
Yeah, the Odyssey with the.
We take the engine out of
wing and
the
a splitter.
Odyssey. We put it in the S2000. It's a beast.
Oh,
It's
yes.
the V6. For me, car dreams, I guess that's where I live in right now. So I have an OEM, really clean S2000. 100. I bought it at 138K miles, but it was the paint was redone, interior was redone with the leather and stuff. So it's a really clean example. Right before COVID hit, I bought it.
Wow.
So I got it in. I bought it before the spike, or not spike, but the rise in pricing of all used cars in general, right?
Mhm.
So,
It's a great time to sell an Odyssey.
especially-
Just saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Odyssey, definitely the engine could be dropped into like a EG, right?
Yeah,
We know
yeah.
that 6-cylinder swap is something that's done
Yep.
in some of the other Hondas, but nonetheless, I'm still at a place right now where I'm not sure whether the S2000 is this OEM high value car that I want versus this crazy build. And as you guys know, a lot of cars out here in California specifically, you can get to like wild very easily with all the local resources. I tend to shop in the used car parts area of the community out here, and I wait for really nice parts in the used bin or whatever. And so my patience for that, which John knows, is a very high threshold because the value per dollar is just definitely there. And the
And you have nothing but time right now.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the options are plentiful out here with the used scene, especially even with the S2000 being an older platform. It's really easy, but it's not even so much of a financial limitation. I just don't know what avenue I want to pick with the S2000. OEM purely versus crazy wild build or something in between. I'm still at a decision-making point. So that's why that third car ideally would be a nice balance of something. I'm still deciding personally.
So is the S2000, have you decided if it's a track car or you're going to keep it as a street
That's
car?
where I'm it's such a good platform. When I drove
is.
it at the Auto Club Speedway, I really pushed it to the limit personally. Jaime was my HPDE 1 instructor for the second time I went. The first time, because it was just getting out of COVID, I drove that track solo. So there was a lot of room for improvement instances of me being on the track. But Jaime, our Race FF pod friend, he helped in coaching me in that second session and really got me to extract more capability out of that car. So it was awesome. I love the car. I just don't know if I want to, air quotes, ruin it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what about you, John? Do you
Yeah,
do you have any
I'm
hopes,
clearly-
dreams, goals?
Yeah, I'm like Randy is very clearly the more pragmatic out of both of us.
We'll switch him.
He's
Don't
a little
worry.
more grounded. I would say short term, my dreams are to podium. It doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter if it's time attack or wheel to wheel, but I want a podium soon. I haven't really had anything official like that. The long term, I mean, you've got sort of we have the Long Beach Grand Prix that just passed. I mean, doing a lap at a Long Beach Grand Prix is an absolute dream. Or going overseas and getting a lap in the Nürburgring, something like that, I would say is more on the long term in terms of bucket list items. In terms of genuine dreams, I know having 20 cars is more of a chore than a dream, but having a big garage with options would be the major goal. But we'll see if we get there.
Yeah. Bill knows all about having multiple cars and
What are you trying to say?
I've heard.
What are you trying to say? I mean, hey, I'm on your side here. I'm trying to get you a Civic. So what's the goal for the E36? Where are you thinking that's going?
That is the permanent default race car. As of right now, I don't anticipate it ever going away. Right now it's built for time attack, meaning there is no full cage. It's really just a roll bar. And I want to, right now I'm in HPD 3, the goal of getting HPD 4 in October at Button Willow. And then from there, move into time attack and then hopefully do Beamer Challenge next year. I think I'm nearing a place where I think I'm kind of ready for that. So I do want to put in a year of time attack and then see how I do, get a couple trophies, get my confidence up a little bit, psychologically get there, and then prep the car for wheel-to-wheel racing and be an actual race car driver.
That'd be fun. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely.
Mhm. So when it comes to your podcast or your goals with your car journeys, do you guys have a philosophy for it?
I would say for us, or for me, with the podcast, it was initially my idea, and that's when John had mentioned I brought him along, and we do it together as a partnership or whatever. We're of a mindset of like the highest quality we can do, the highest quality that we can put out. That includes not just the parts and my decisions personally for my car and the parts I buy, but also in the content that we provide on our Instagram, which is what primarily John's the one that owns our Instagram, and the content that's there, as well as the podcast product that we put out. We plan on Mondays, so we plan today for our Friday recording so that we have time to prepare whatever newfangled segments or ideas that we have. And as I'd mentioned, we try to just put out the best quality that we can. To John's point earlier, he's more in the track life scene. I'm in that balancing life, dad mode / car passion, but I'm maybe more of the everyday car guy that really can't either A, afford, or B, doesn't have the time, but still loves it so much that it's almost like a fourth child for me, my car. I think it's like a child for all of us as car people, right? But nonetheless, yes, it's all about that high quality across the board and trying to deliver that in all aspects of life.
I think that's important though, to have that perspective from somebody that's, is young and have kids and you know what I mean, and still has the interest. I mean, we're at a point where our kids are older and we have a little bit of time, but certainly there's people out there that I'm sure appreciate your passion and your perspective and listening to you and watching you grow and become more interested in seeing where it goes. So that's awesome.
And then trying to squeeze your in between all your life balance, it's kind of dipping your toe in here and dipping your toe in there and trying to figure out how to do it, which is a great perspective.
Yes.
And listen, if you wait too long, right, then you're going to end up looking like me when you get started.
Oh,
So try to do better. Aim
So
higher.
Bill, did you started later in life with your track life experience?
Yeah, the first digit was a 5. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So what we're saying, Randy, is there's time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Honestly,
We set
that's
the
what
bar
our,
low, man. We set the
our
bar low. You
podcast-
just step right over it.
yeah, our podcast was doing the same thing. It was just a big journey of all our mistakes and all of our triumphs at the same time. And sometimes they're a hot mess and sometimes, but like you guys said in your podcast, it's important that you project that because it really is easy to do it. It is a time management balance thing. There is a little bit of finance to it, but it's also depends on, what is your upper limit. There is no upper limit for it. you know, and you can find ways of doing it very inexpensively too. So
You've got two budgets. You've got the time budget and the money budget. And you just
mhm.
gotta, if it's important and you can pull it off. Sometimes the one budget lets you get the other budget taken care of. And sometimes, life doesn't let you do what you want to do. It's part of being a parent. So
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
we understand.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom from the three.
That doesn't mean we don't want you out there, though. It means you
Yes.
just go out
Yes.
as much as you can.
Mhm.
That's why I love having a friend in John and Jaime from Race FF Pod that like pulls me out, and it's a good way to make sure that I balance my own personal
Mhm.
hobbies
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
insert
Yeah.
it into my own life as well.
Mhm. I can see that.
So we're really committed to getting people interested in start performance driving and racing. Do you have any thoughts or tips for newbies to do, or to get off the sofa and go to the track, or at least drive on some back roads, or drive their family car really fast, or
Well, I think I mean that's part of our philosophy too, right? If we are aware that we convinced one person to start going out to the track, we're successful. But I think I think it's thinking about the obstacles you thought were present. Because when I was younger, I wanted to do this, but it just seemed very unobtainable. You needed to have a race car, you needed to have a suit, you needed to have this, you needed to have that. But realistically, I think what people need to recognize is that you could take the Odyssey out to the track and learn to lap in a van. You don't necessarily need to have all the latest equipment, all the fastest car. You could go in a Kia Rio and do some damage to a few Corvette egos if you're so inclined. But I think that's you need to get out of sort of the psychological barriers of going out to the track. I think sometimes because you're intimidated, you do put those ideas in your head, but absolutely not necessary. Just make sure your fluids are okay, your brake pads have enough meat on them. Obviously, your first few performance driving sessions, you're not going to be Mario Andretti, so you don't need all the crazy equipment or even performance brake pads. All you need is to make sure that everything is in good order, and then you can go have fun. And take a friend with you. I think that always makes things a little less intimidating. If you want that friend to be
occasionally
me,
hilarious.
yes, yes, you need someone to document the trouble. But yeah, I think that's what I think. I think you just need to get past the idea that you need a million things, and you just need to get in your car and go hot lap.
So the
Yeah,
key
I
to
like
bringing
that
a friend is when they take
Yes.
the video, you make sure when you post it that you tell them they did that in the slow-mo function, and just, that's just the slow-mo. That's not what you were doing. So especially in the
That
beginning.
takes care of the problems.
So
Exactly.
how about you,
Yeah.
Randy?
So I would actually, I like what John had said a lot because again, I was intimidated. We're spoiled here in California. We've got within a 2 hour driving radius, 1 to like 3-ish or 4 tracks that are available to us, and those are big ones, and a few like little go-kart tracks that you could actually take your car on to within an hour's drive from us.
Mhm.
So whereas I grew up in Detroit and that was not the case, it's all the roads are straight lines, there's no hills. So to answer the question, if something's not reachable or attainable within a reasonable driving distance, have fun, find the local autocross event. I haven't done one myself, but it does kind of open your eyes up to what your car can do and how much fun you can have in it besides straight line stop and go driving in traffic. So
And
just push yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
that's probably one of the more inexpensive ways to enter also, is to find a local autocross event, because you don't have to have all of that equipment that people are talking about. So yeah.
Absolutely. And breaking the seal by just hanging out with other car people too. I think I was aware of car autocrosses in Michigan, but I didn't really hang out and go to the meets and all that stuff. That was early internet days, so meets were not quite as easy to get set up as they are these days. So going to those, finding your enthusiast that you can relate to and has the same tastes in the same genre as what you're into helps in kind of building up the motivation to put on the training wheels and head out there to whatever car driving event you want to go to.
So what you're saying is everybody needs to find a John.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right. Because podcasts and cars don't happen without
That's a dangerous
John.
proposition.
Yes, yeah. A guy that encourages you to spend money on your passion.
So just bouncing off of Jennifer's question real quick. What about the car culture out there for newbies going into this? How accessible and how friendly is it? Is it intimidating whatsoever?
John, you want to take that first, or you want me to give that external perspective?
Yeah, go for it. I'll go after you.
Okay, so the again, coming from a big muscle, like a completely muscle world in Detroit, and being the little JDM guy who could never ever stand a chance against those cars, it was very much different from how it is in California. You really can find your own sub niche of Euro. You want to be in this like a sub niche. You want to be in the boxer world with the Subi people. There's a like all West Coast meet for everything out here. The RX-7 clubs come out to a big stadium type meet. The Honda people, the Subi people, the Porsche people, the classic car people, the Jay Leno level people, the poor people or not so Jay Leno type people. It's really a buffet, like a Vegas of car stuff out here, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very welcoming. You can really start your own thing and watch it grow into something huge, as we've seen with some of our other friends, like in the BMW world with Urban Canvas, one of the groups that John got to know and connected us with. So it's open, very, very open, very friendly. It is still a niche of hobbyists, I would say, but it's very welcoming. I think a lot of the Fast and Furious fluff and posers kind of got out of the car game out here, and it's really more the purists or really interested people.
Yeah, the Fast and Furious guys all went off and had kids. Now they got families and
Yeah.
Honda Odysseys.
they had to sell their cars into an Odyssey.
It never came back because they weren't real. They were really true about it. So I came back. John.
It's all about family, man. Just remember that, Randy.
Absolutely true. Good quote. Good quote.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. I mean, the culture here is as big as you want it to be and as small as you want it to be. I mean, we even have like groups of people that are dedicated to combining cars and anime, where they have big, giant, liveries dedicated to the anime characters they support, where it's really just that at car meets. I think it's very inclusive. There's always that... I think it's mostly in our minds, right? That it goes back sort of the race thing, that unless you have a fancy car with all these fancy parts, no one's going to really respect you. But the truth of the matter is, for any car person, if you ask them about their car journey, about their car, about their passions around really into cars, they're more than happy to share it with you. I know I am. I'm sure you guys are. And I think that goes for any meet out here, right? So if you're open to absorbing information and asking questions, you're going to have the time of your life anywhere you go.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
So let's go to the podcast. You guys have a podcast. I don't know why anybody would have a podcast, but let's pretend. Why did you guys get started with the podcast? And did you have like goals going into it, or was it just a way for you two to get together and talk about Honda Odysseys, or
Man, the Odyssey is the callback of this episode, huh?
It's a through theme, you got to keep it going all the way through.
But it is relatable, right, to you guys'
Exactly.
point. I'll start it with just as John mentioned earlier, where it dawned on me was actually, I don't know if you would call it that we started in the early days of the podcast scene. It's not really, right? Because Joe Rogan was already pretty big. But it wasn't what it is now, which is pre-COVID and post-COVID, you could almost say. There were far less, there was no subgenre in the podcast section for automotive stuff. There was a handful, but nothing really major.
Right.
And so we started, because the Cube Life, we're both office mates, John and myself. And the Cube Life, just the whole grind, just like Office Space, the movie, it really was getting to me at some point. And I was looking, I used to have Hot Wheels on my Cube, and I was just staring at them and listening to an inspirational podcaster, Joe Coy, who's a comedian, who's also Filipino, such as myself. And he was saying, dude, do what you want. Do something that's in your passion. Get out of the grind. Don't be in the cube. And I'm like, dude, he's literally speaking to me. And so that's what triggered, like, you know what? I gotta get out of this 9 to 5 somehow, hopefully someday, fully, and do something and pursue something that I'm purely, truly passionate about. And thus, 91 Octane was initialized.
Right.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think having a creative outlet has always been part of sort of my therapy, I would think. Even in college, I had a live show with a roommate called Double Dose of Nonsense. And it was like just a ridiculous variety show where there were episodes where I would pose as Batman and he would interview me. I mean, it was really ridiculous stuff. But
can you make the noise for us? Just do the voice. Just do the voice. We need the voice. you went there, man.
It was a really bad impersonation.
That's fine.
It was actually, I think in the episode, I pretended to eat Frosted Flakes as Batman. So it was just like, and nothing more than that. But yeah, it's having a creative outlet has always been good. I've always enjoyed having conversations with like-minded individuals. And with Randy, even after he left the company that we were both working at, we always kept in touch, and all our conversations were like 2-3 hours long. And it would get dark and we would say, all right, we're leaving for whatever place we were eating at. And then we end up on the trunk of our cars talking for another hour or two. So we realized that, you know, we could talk about this. It was our passion. Why not throw it on a mic and see what happens? And now we're here.
So any goals for the podcast? Any white whale guests, maybe?
Goals for white whale guests. Not really. It's for guests for us are sort of the cherry on top. We do enjoy having guests, but I think the pursuit of guests and lining those up can be I don't know. It's a grind. It's a grind to maintain a line of guests. So we've dedicated our time more to creating entertaining content that doesn't necessarily require a guest. So we don't really give it much thought in terms of white whales. Of course, there's big names. I mean, we would love to have big motorsport names come on the podcast, but we don't really see ourselves on that level yet. So I think until we get there, that's when we'll start reaching.
What about you, Randy? You're going to be politically correct like John, or are you going to answer the question?
I mean, we are always in agreement, and we are in tune with a lot of what he had stated. We originally kind of aspired to that, and because Hollywood is here, a lot of people are really accessible. But as part of that, again, coming from an external Midwestern world, I've come to realize that because Hollywood is here in California or SoCal, people are also conditioned to like flicking out or not trusting you and feeling like you're in it to grow yourself rather than to be like mutually like growing together kind of thing. There's this weird dynamic out here about that, just people wanting to ride other people's coattails and taking advantage, and that whole component of the Hollywood style of things. So that makes it almost harder unless you really build a really, really good close rapport with a higher, bigger name type of thing. It's not so easy to just get them to join our, whatever little or big podcast, however they see us, unless it's like a Joe Rogan level type of thing. So to John's point, You know, we put a lot of energy into the entertainment component of our podcast. We do get to rub elbows with some of the influencers in the automotive world. Like you see BC Moto around every now and then. I've met RJ De Vera at a Filipino convention. He was the consultant and in the beginning opening sequence of Fast and Furious, the original movie. So you kind of you bump into those people relatively easily, just showing up at the meets if they're in that sub niche again.
Right.
It's just a matter of building the relationships, networking, making sure they feel like they trust you. And once you build that friendship, for us, they'll start to join, or we just are friends off the mic, and that's okay enough for me, quite honestly. It's just I'm happy to get to know people in the car industry. Whether or not they want to be part of the podcast is fine. It's just about the cars, the journey, and like loving the drive.
Cool. Vicky's muted. This is why I edit.
Yeah. So initially the podcast seemed to have a SoCal focus, seems to have expanded scope to a broad culture.
Was that on purpose, or did it just kind of evolve?
It was a little bit by accident, a little bit on purpose. It's sort of, we're interested in anything car related, right? So I think there's a lot here in Southern California, so there was a lot to talk about early on. But as things progressed, I definitely wanted to include more of Randy's background and talking about Detroit. But then, I mean, there's a different scene in the South. There's a different scene in all the way east. I mean, it's different attitudes, different perspectives. So I think as we started growing our own network and learning things from more people, even learning things from Garage Heroes, I'm going to start mentioning Amish people a little more on the podcast. It sort of naturally progresses into a wider scope. And, you know, obviously we do want to cast a wider net in terms of our audience. Obviously the success component is involved, but we also want to make sure that we are catching every individual that's even considering jumping into the car world. You know, we always want to essentially be recruiting at any chance that we can get.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that, and I like to, well, especially before kids, I love to travel the world. So I have a family in Australia. As a result of some of that family, I've been to Malaysia, and those two countries have huge car scenes, particularly in the aftermarket automotive JDM side of things, right? And so I guess a little quick story back, I used to own a Celica back in 2001, so the last gen Celica. I even, for my forum brethren, brought them car parts from the US because there's an import tax that they would have to pay if it got shipped. So my mom helped me pack up some hood scoops, an external carbon fiber one, and we styrofoamed them up, threw them in a box, and I mean, I charged them a little bit, made a little money too on the side, but nonetheless, I brought like 15 hood scoops to Australia.
Wow.
To sell to, you know, help my fellow 7th gen Celica brethren from the forum. So it's just about extending that network, showing some love to fellow enthusiasts, I think, if anything, whether it's domestically in the US or overseas. Like John said, it's about casting a wide net and making sure people feel included as far as our listenership, and knowing that, hey, we're just like everybody else. And I think that's the common theme. We just all love cars, and that's the main component of our show.
Okay, so you guys have this thing out there that my two beautiful ladies are not familiar with, having never driven out there. You have this thing called, I believe they're canyons or something like that, where people, I've never heard it pronounced. I've just seen it written. And could you describe that for the people who haven't been, I guess, able to enjoy what this canyon driving situation is?
Canyon. Well, let me tell you about the canyons.
Canyons.
Oh, yeah. Although you're almost saying it in Spanish, because in Spanish it's cañón, so you're almost there.
Well,
But a canyon almost it's almost the first driving rite of passage out here. And it starts as you get your car at 16, you finally get some freedom, you want to explore what your car can do. You've got a couple like-minded individuals, so late at night you'll go up into the canyons, and there's a few canyons here. There's Angeles Crest, there's GMR, and depending on what you want, they're all different flavors. Like Los Angeles Crest is more of your high-speed canyons. A lot of high-power cars will go out there. Any real footage you see of cars doing donuts in like cutouts is probably likely at Angeles Crest, whereas GMR has actually banked turns, so it's considered a little more of a driver's canyon experience. So a lot of drivers, quote unquote drivers, I put that in quotes, and I'll follow that up after this, will go out there and start learning how to drive and learning about driving dynamics and going up the hill. Going down is probably more advanced, but I think it's where you get your first taste of performance driving. But I will say that I think some people take it a little too far. I definitely encourage you, late at night, go explore what your car can do. We've all done it at a young age. Be careful, understand the risks. But out here, we've actually developed a problem recently of people actually recording times on their canyon runs. And I was actually going to talk about this on this week's episode, Randy. I know this is new for you too. So recently I found out that there are like underground groups that are recording essentially what equates to a lap time for canyon running. And that has led to an uptick of cars running off the road. And I think especially when you're young, you don't really consider those dangers. So it's, people are influenced by these type of events. So because of that, I've sort of soured on my original canyon experience. I still believe there's a space for it, as long as you are obeying speed limits and not crossing line markers and just making sure you're staying safe and just cruising with your friends, because that's originally what it was. You'd experience a little speed, but not going crazy. And now it's kind of turning into competing on the street, which is essentially street racing with turns. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Because some of these, you say it canyon, I think is how you're pronouncing it. So I'm sorry. Some of these canyons, one side may be a mountain, a hill, it could be a cliff, and then the other side could be the opposite. So but the downside can be pretty bad.
Oh yeah, I think it's either way. I've seen cars hit the wall and flip upside down on the road. I've seen cars go off the side of the cliff and end up upside down looking like a pancake. Luckily, in both those instances, the drivers came out relatively unharmed, but
until they got home to mom.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. No, most definitely.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So to kind of piggyback again off of what John had said, as an outsider with straight flat roads in the Midwest, Detroit is very much a grid setup as far as our roads. There's almost no curved turns. The canyons they're kind of scary for a Midwesterner, or maybe just me. They are indeed a cliff. So if you take that speed to a turn at too high of a speed, if there isn't a big rock at that corner, you're gonna go off and fall to your doom. So it is dicey. That is shocking that people are timing themselves. Maybe they're trying to be a lot like the anime Initial D. I don't know, but it is fun. So to kind of add the lighter side of it, if you are in a controlled state and you're not pushing yourself too hard and or your car too hard, you can have a little bit of fun on sections that are more of a valley where you're really not gonna run off of a cliff or anything. It's almost between the two mountains. It's those sections that I probably obviously am most confident in and feel the most comfortable, but otherwise it can be challenging to drive up into those hills or mountains. And if you do get in an accident, as John had mentioned, you get helicoptered out. There's no ambulance that drives up. So guess who's paying that bill? You or your insurance. So it's not cheap to make a mistake up there.
It's something that you should experience, but you need to be in control.
Yeah,
For
I mean,
sure.
I think in order to have the most fun, having an HPDE under your belt
Mhm.
makes sense. And then you can really learn how to cruise. You understand your car, you understand those limits, and therefore you're going to be safe, because making yourself a predictable driver is essentially what's going to keep you safe anywhere. So being predictable up in the canyon is going to protect you and everyone else that's up there. Unfortunately, that's not always the case with the attendees. And that's why we
Yes.
go in the mornings now. We don't go late night.
Yeah, I like mornings. That's a good plan for me.
Yeah.
So John, you had a I think it was early on in your podcast. You had a story about you and your non BMW track car, which may or may not be being converted back into a street car, and somebody who was trying to keep up with you with a significantly better half on their car, and I believe the story went quite well for you, and not so well for our friend.
I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I do all this homework, so like I go and listen. Like the only reason we waited this long was I go listen to every single podcast and take notes. So it's kind of unfair.
Man,
Oh, no.
you're really hitting me with the classics.
So not that I remember, but somewhere around 49, I think you went up there and you were driving in the canyon and you were going in your Kia and
Oh, that was with the 8.6.
Yeah.
Yes.
yes.
So yeah, so when I had the Rio, I would take it up into the canyons every once in a while, and sometimes I'd like to just create some content for Instagram or whatever. So I'd put some cameras on the car, and I was going up. I forget which canyon this was now at this point, but I was going up the canyon, and behind me pulls up a 8.6 or an FRS or BRZ, pick one.
One of the triplets.
Yeah, and we were going uphill, and I figured I'd sort of test him and see if he could keep up or not. And we were driving, and we were doing okay. I mean, he was keeping up, but I'm at this point fairly practiced. So we're going up the canyon, and I'm losing him a little bit, and I can see that he's trying his best to keep up. But realistically, I mean, most people up there are not practiced in terms of driving. So you could see that his line was probably a little compromised in a lot of points. So I'm going up. I finally get to a spot where I can stop, and I wanted to put my front camera in the back. And I think that's when the 8.6 passes by me, and the significant other of the driver looks over and just kind of smiles at me, and just kind of, she recognized that her significant other wasn't exactly keeping up.
Yeah, and you were not exactly at a winning horsepower ratio relative to the other car.
No, I think that's honestly that feeling, and I know that it's not a humble thing to say, but beating multiple cars in the Rio in different spaces felt amazing. The first instance of that was at autocross. I did an autocross event at Anaheim Stadium out here. And I think I had 2 sessions. And on my second session, I wrap up, we go look at the leaderboard, and my Kia Rio is number 1. I have the number 1 time for my sessions. And I'm looking down, I mean, you're looking at Chevy Camaros, we're looking at Corvettes, we're looking at Mustangs. And as I'm looking at the leaderboard, a guy comes next to me, and he says, I think it was in the Corvette, he said, "I got beat by a Kia Rio." And I'm standing right next to him, and I said, "That's me," and that felt amazing. And that was that feeling. That feeling, I held on to that for a good while. Soon after that, I started actually going to the track, and Jaime helped me actually pass up a Corvette at turn 9 at Big Willow, which is an infamous turn, considered very dangerous. But that was sort of doubling up on that experience of starting to show up higher horsepower cars in my little Kia Rio, where, I would arrive at the track and people would ask me, "Oh, what car do you have?" Like when I wasn't in front of my car. And I would tell them, "Oh, I have a Kia Rio." And they would look at me like I was crazy. Like, well, what are you even doing here? And these are people that, I respected their driving. I knew how fast they were. And I was like, man, this feels horrible. But it sort of put a chip on my shoulder in terms of showing them what I could do.
There's nothing like when somebody asks you, "Hey, what did you do to your car after you passed them in a session?" You go, "Nothing. It's stock."
Yeah. Nothing at all. Absolutely. I love awesome. That. And I look for that. Now it's a little harder than the E36. There's some expectations that come with getting into a better platform, but we're still hunting for that.
Yeah. I understand. Miss Vicki, it's showtime.
It's showtime. All right. So we're going to do the Fast and Furious Storytime questions. We're going to do a couple. I think we're kind of running late, so I think we could squeeze a couple in. These are questions that are kind of more so rapid fire, get to know you a little better, kind of take you back, a little nostalgia. So we're going to have Jennifer tip us off.
Here we go. So I'll ask Randy first, I guess, and then we'll do John. So we want to know, and our listeners want to know, what was your very first car, and what was the worst car you've ever had?
Mine was a hand-me-down, as most people, I'm sure, who grew up in my era, hand-me-down 1989 Toyota Camry. It was the 6-cylinder, so it was a station wagon also.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So within a year, I think I got into an accident in it. Not my fault, of course, although I was the 16-year-old.
Was it beige?
It was cherry red, or like a dark red. Yeah, with the gray tweed interior.
Oh, nice.
So I wouldn't call it a horrible car. It was reliable as all heck, right? So probably my worst car was actually a 99 Toyota Solara, just because there's almost, John made something out of the Kia Rio. He made lemonade out of lemons. At that time in my life, I was not motivated by the Camry Solara to make lemonade out of lemons. So that was probably my worst car.
What about you, John?
Oh, for me, worst car was probably my third car, a 98 Mustang. It was the New Edge Mustang, but it was a V6. It was not the GT. It was still stick shift. I owned it for a week before I was T-boned, and it was totaled completely. But I mean, I wasn't sad about that loss, and I was okay. So, but I would say it's probably the only bad car I've ever owned, a car that I didn't really enjoy.
Very, very cool.
So, what is the car from your family that sticks out the most?
For me, my dad was very much, I'm an extension of my dad, right? So he was very much the family car guy. So we've only had that Camry. We had a big Dodge van, the vans that had the extended roofs, a la the 90s, with a ladder in the back. That van, actually, I would say probably sticks out the most. We took many a trip from Detroit to Orlando and New Jersey, cutting through your part of town in Pennsylvania in that van. So I learned how to drive on the equivalent of a lazy boy in a lot of family trips on that thing. But we loved it. There's a TV in it, it was a 91. So yeah, it was one of the earlier vehicles that had a actual 10-inch TV inside that I could hook up my Nintendo to. and play some video games while I was
Yeah.
long driving. So yeah, and we'd sleep in the back while the car was moving on the bed. So it was very much like a little mini RV type of vehicle. I love that thing.
That sounds like fun. All right, so there's this concept that Spike Ferenczen uses on his podcast, and he talks about a taproot car. It's the car that got you into cars. It could be a Hot Wheels car, it could be a toy car, it could be a neighbor's car, it could be a family car. What was the taproot car that got you into being the car guy that you are?
I think for me, it was my first E36. I mean, I could say it was like the Ferrari F40 when I was in like third grade, where I used my book money to buy a poster at the book fair instead of buying books. But I think realistically, once I got old enough, it was my first E36, which is a 318. And that car came around the time where I could finally afford modifications. So I bought my nice wheels. I bought nice suspension for the car. It was still very much a street car, but I think that's kind of what sparked my interest and why I'm still in an E36 today. Unfortunately, that car, I still believe it might have lost a wheel bearing. I still don't know, but I fishtailed on the freeway at about 70 miles an hour into a ditch and flipped it a turn and a half, landed upside down on the side of the freeway. Luckily, this was at 4 a.m, and that was the end of that car. I was fine, but yeah, that was the end of my first E36, and I wanted to get back into one since.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So for me, many Transformers decades ago, I was into that, but I was only 2, so I didn't know what was what. But as far as the first real car, mine was after the Camry. I picked up a '91 Toyota Celica GTS out in Jersey. So it was my aunt's car, and it was fully decked out with 12 speakers. It had a CD player in a '91 model, moonroof, no AC working, but nonetheless there was an AC vent present. But it was an automatic. Regardless of that, I also, at the time, if you guys remember, there was a channel called Speed Vision that was on some of the local cable networks, and they had started to show WRC on Saturday nights. So I knew that I started to find out that my car, there was a turbo all-wheel drive version of my car sold overseas and in the States, but it was very, very low numbers sold out here. And so that was probably my intro. That was before Fast and Furious came out, and I started to discover some of the JDM related aftermarket magazines when I'd fly to LA. So I started to see that my sub niche was getting represented in a magazine. There were some parts for my car. I had a not common platform, but a platform that had some capability outside of what the one I had. And so it got me really into the potential for what my car could be. Unfortunately, like John, I lost that car in an accident. I got T-boned on the first snow with really bad tires when I was in Michigan, one of the first snows of the year in '05. So nonetheless, that one plucks at my heartstrings. It's probably my M3 equivalent, I would say.
Okay. So were you a Rodimus Prime kid, or were you a
I was probably Optimus, not quite the
Optimus?
movie.
Who wasn't?
Yes, yeah, exactly. The quintessential hero of that show. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not a problem. Miss Jen?
Oh, let's see. I gotta pick a good one. Let me see.
You could do your favorite.
What is which one? What is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time? I love this question. Let's go with John.
Okay, I'll start because John's needs a second to think
he's
about
really
it.
He's really pondering that. You can just see it all over his face. Like,
It's like, how do I get an E36 into this answer?
Oh man. For me, growing up, my parents were James Bond fans. So anytime it was on ABC or whatever on Saturday nights, because we didn't have cable, I loved the Lotus in the Roger Moore James Bond. I don't remember which one that was, where it was a submarine.
I want to say it's a Moonraker, but it might not be.
No, it wasn't Moonraker. I don't even remember.
It's the white Esprit that goes underwater. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it was like a ski movie, I think, because they were in the Alps or something.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
Yeah, and he was there was that young ice skater that was trying to fancy James Bond. Well, I mean, that movie appeals to me in many ways, but from a car perspective, the submarine component of that was just like dream. Like, I wanted to be a spy after watching that movie. Let's just say because of the car. So definitely my favorite car movie.
Okay.
Oh man, I don't want to keep you guys here all night because this is definitely something to ponder really hard. I'm surprised I don't have an answer to this, to be honest. A solid answer.
It was the Spy Who Loved Me. Sorry.
There you go. Thank you. The Spy Who Loved Me.
I couldn't remember. Okay.
I think probably a soft answer is going to be Eleanor and Gone in 60 Seconds.
Okay.
Probably. I still very much want to get into a vintage muscle car. That's something I'm completely unfamiliar with, but I've loved that car since that movie. And I would say that's probably my pick for now. Ask me tomorrow.
Okay. You're allowed. Next time you come on the podcast, we'll ask you again.
Yeah.
No problem.
So, do either of you have a car that got away yet?
It could be one you had and sold or lost in an accident, or it could be one you didn't get to buy because of something came up or whatever. Your grandfather gave it to somebody else.
I don't think so. Not for me. I haven't had a car that got away yet.
That's a good place to be.
You're still young, John.
That's a lie. I'm gonna take that back. That's a lie. So originally, when I was hunting for my E92 M3, the dream was to have a Dakar yellow E92 M3, and that was an individual color, meaning it wasn't released in general with that color. You had to pre-order it with that color because that was a color that was reserved for previous generations. And I found one. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I went to go make an offer, and we just couldn't make a deal. There was a check engine light on it at the time, so I was a little stretched in terms of what he wanted for it. And it just kind of fell through. And it got away. And that kind of weighed on me enough to where I rushed into the next E92 that I got, which ended up being a great deal. But it was a matter of weeks before I was in another car. So I would say that's the one that got away for sure.
For me, it took me a second actually, but my god sister had a naturally aspirated Mark IV Supra. It was a 99. It was a pearl white. It was an automatic too, so it was very undesirable at the time. So she was selling it in 2008, let's say, for $9,000. So I would say and I offered to help her sell it in Illinois. She was in Michigan. So I'd say that for me is it, because we all know what the value of that thing is today. It's probably in the 40 to 50K range.
Yeah.
Even if it was around 100K miles. So low miles, again, it's just the lower 2J non-turbo Supra. But nonetheless, we all know the capability of that engine. It's a grail car for many JDM folks, especially. That's definitely the one that got away, I'd say.
Good one.
All right, gentlemen. There's a very large lottery going on right now. And I'm sorry for everybody else that doesn't win, because when we win, we're going to have an island, right? And on our island, we're going to have a nice racetrack, and we're going to have all the facilities you guys want to be on track or off track, whatever you need. And as a thank you for coming on the podcast, we're going to make sure that we have the 5 cars that you guys want to be there, so you have the best experience possible, because we like to take care of our guests. So what are the 5 cars that you each would like to have on the island waiting for you, ready to go?
Anytime, John. I think I'm ready with 4.
All right.
Go for it.
John's figuring out how many E36s is 5.
Yeah, all the different trims and variants. The Euro version, etc. For me, quickly, it's gonna be the big four probably from the JDM golden era in the 90s. So probably the R34, since we're talking lottery. So that's the Skyline GTR R34,
No problem.
which I've gotten to ride in one.
I'll take care of you, man. I'll get you whichever one you want, man.
Appreciate that. Then
Anytime.
Of course the Mark IV twin turbo Supra. The RX-7, the most recent gen RX-7, and the NA1, actually the first gen NSX.
Okay.
So that's my four.
That's
So
four.
to round out the fifth, it would probably be Porsche 964. I don't know what year or turbo or not, but that's the late 80s to early 90s gen Porsche 911 essentially.
We'll have to invite you over when the Radwood guys come. So okay, that's
exactly.
fine.
There you go. Yes.
Oh
Hey,
man,
John.
I'm not too far off. So R32 GTR for me. I'm not going to be as expensive as Randy. Definitely
You're worth it though, man. I'll take care of you.
Thank you. E30 M3 Evo. That's
okay.
definitely on the list. We've got. I know this is probably not ideal, but a 64 Impala. I know we're going to end up cruising on this island, so I'm definitely going to need my lowrider.
Does it have to do the jumps, or are we going to go with the?
It doesn't necessarily have to, but if
bonus
it does,
points, bonus
I won't
points.
be mad. Yeah.
All right, bonus points. All right.
And then for my last two, definitely first generation NSX. That's going to be there, and then a Porsche GT3 RS is going to be my last one.
Ooh. You're kind of all over the place there. I like it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's all right. I know you're going to go to Jennifer's one car that she's bringing, so that's fine. Jennifer?
I'm bringing the taco truck.
That's right.
Oh, that's the best one out of all of them.
Right, it's going to race the Wienermobile from Oscar Mayer.
So, what is your favorite decade of car?
It's going to be 90s for me.
Oh yeah, a little nostalgia
90s.
there for you.
Yeah, definitely 90s is going to be. I mean, the R32 GTR kind of falls out of there, but it's close. There's a part of it there. Pretty much anything BMW put out during that generation, I'll drive. Even Porsche is great during that generation. Yeah, I mean, I think the 90s gives me the biggest library to choose from. So I think that's probably would be my decade.
And I'll say I'll have to second that, at the risk of copying John. I mean, when you look at my Gran Turismo car collection, it's very heavily 90s JDM focused. So I'd also have to say 90s without question.
I'm gonna say these are really, really good questions. Like I'm having to really wring out my brain.
All right, then we'll tax you a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Randy, you're gonna have to answer first because Jonathan's gonna melt into a little puddle. Okay. What is the dream car for you to start your race car build from?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Dream car to start the race car build. I'm repeating the question to buy myself time.
That's fine.
It might.
I see steam coming off of John, so we're fine.
Right. Well, it definitely for me, growing up in the Midwest, it has to be rear-wheel drive because growing up, we didn't have rear-wheel drive because traction control was not a thing. Thus, with snow, as you know, Pennsylvanians know, you got to go front-wheel drive. So, and now having the rear-wheel drive, I love it. With that said, rear-wheel drive platform is one criteria. And as I'm narrowing it down in my brain, I actually almost have to lean Porsche a little bit, I would say, for the dream build. And if we're talking grassrootsy, obviously the cheapest 911 I can get into, that would be, not desecrating a good example. I always feel bad about desecrating the OEM level high quality stuff. So
You
something
just
that's
answered what you're going to do with your S2000 then.
That's a good callback. Maybe you're right. Yeah, you're probably right actually. So yeah, like a well used, maybe the least loved 911s, which are the 05s, 06s, I think, or something like that. When they went liquid cooled, is
Mhm.
probably where I would land. So I don't feel again so bad about desecrating an
Okay.
OEM car.
All right. He gave you as much time as he could there.
Yeah. Actually, I think this one's easier for me,
Really?
as I have thought about this one, and it would definitely be the first generation NSX. I think that would be the platform that I'd go with in terms of building a race car from the ground up.
Okay. So I forgot to mention, you have to tell me what you're building it for. What racing type?
It would definitely be, I would probably definitely be a time trial car, I
Okay.
would say.
Okay.
I think the NSX is definitely a car I would want to lap in by myself. If you said a wheel-to-wheel car, I would give you the same answer as Randy. I think in Porsche just makes sense.
Okay.
I'll make it a little fun, and I'll say that I would safari out the Porsche
Oh,
and
nice.
make it a rally car, maybe
That-
just to be lifted, mud tires, and the bar in the front, and the four headlight or the four lights,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
all that stuff, just to give it a different vibe.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. What do you think, Miss
I
Vicki?
can feel my pockets getting lighter as we talk about this stuff.
I know.
Well-
We're here to help you spend your money. We forgot to mention that part of the podcast.
So of all the cars that are out there, which one would you wipe away from history if you could?
Can we say the Yugo?
Sure.
I remember the Yugo. That was
Remember
mine.
the Yugo.
Who doesn't
That's-
remember that? Honestly, I think that thing would just fall apart right in the middle of the street.
That's true. That's true.
You go, we go, no go.
So I was thinking a little bit more deeply about that question, and I guess one of the car that was in Michigan was really popular was like the Dodge Shadow,
Oh,
which
wow.
was the predecessor to the Neon.
Uh-huh.
I think I would eliminate that because so many of my classmates had it, and it's just ugly and slow and just very utilitarian, but never a car I ever dreamt I'd want. So I'd wipe that one out.
And that means the neon win exists, so it's a double win.
There you go.
I don't know. Those Neons raced pretty good for a while there.
Yeah, the SRT4.
Yes.
All right. So, gentlemen, you guys are starting your racing careers. I'm just trying to prepare you for the question that you will get. What is the fastest you've ever driven, in what car, and where or when? And Mexico is an option. Just saying.
On the street or I guess
that would
if
be
you're-
Mexico.
You're
Mexico.
right.
Mexico.
On
a closed course.
Me, when I moved to California, I drove pretty fast on the straightaways in Arizona, where you could see for like 4 miles or 10 miles out.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't the fastest, but I went pretty fast in a Honda Civic Si. So the fastest for me was the Ferrari on Las Vegas Speedway, probably in the 140s on the straight. I would
Nice.
guess. I was holding on for dear life more than looking at the speedo, but
Nice.
maybe around there is where I
Probably like 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
For me, it'd be 130 at Auto Club in the E36 M3 around the Roval.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
Nice.
Very
yes,
cool.
definitely.
We had some pro drivers on here, and they were quoting some numbers that we were like, okay, that's
I'm
That-
sure.
that's a lot.
I will only go as fast as my cars will let me go. So once I get into some of those dream cars that we talked about,
Yeah.
I'll have better answers.
Yeah, we've had a couple two as a first digit people. I was like, okay,
Wow.
that's
What's the fastest number or the biggest number you've gotten?
I think it was like 206. I think it was.
What car?
I don't remember. I'm trying to remember which guest it was. It might have been Mike Skeen. He's driven some pretty wacky cars.
Had to be in Mexico for sure.
Oh, definitely Mexico. Actually, I think it was on on a racetrack, which is even scarier because usually on a
for
racetrack
sure.
you don't go that fast. But anyway, all right, Miss Vicki.
Have any more questions?
I
Think
know
we're
that's.
done.
I know.
So I'd like to thank you for coming on to our podcast. Is there
Thank
any
you for
way?
having us.
Is there any way that our audience can keep in touch with you
Yes,
besides
absolutely.
your podcast?
You can follow us on Instagram at 91 Octane. That is all letters, no numbers, as you might have heard already. You can also reach us at Cafe Carrera by 91 in order to fund our car dreams. We have started a coffee company. So now we sell watermelon whole bean coffee that comes from where my family was born and where they're from. So we're using that to fund our dreams. Also, you can email us info@91octane if you want to reach us, ask us questions, even join us on the track. It doesn't matter if you're from Southern California and you need someone to kind of help you go to your first track day. I would love to help you. Randy would love to help you. Don't be shy about talking to us.
Awesome.
So I have this really bad habit of listening to podcasts at 2x. So the first time he started talking about the coffee, I'm sitting here going, what is he talking about? What is watermelon coffee? I'm like, what? How do you get coffee out of a watermelon? I mean, this makes no sense. I'm like, it's got to be a joke. And then he said it again. I'm like, this watermelon coffee, man, there's got to be something here. Then I slowed you down. I'm like, oh, Guatemalan. Oh, it's almost the same. Whoops.
There we go. That might be the next thing, watermelon coffee.
Watermelon coffee. Yeah, it's going to take a lot to roast a watermelon, though. But the flavors, you get that little, no, forget it. I'm not even going to try. I'm not a coffee guy. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We hope you had a good time.
We had a great time. Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you. Pleasure talking to you. Enjoy the podcast. Not quite sure why everything you have on social media spells out the 91, yet your podcast logo is the numbers, but whatever. It's up to you. I'm like sitting here going, everything's spelled out, but the podcast anyway. So good luck with the podcast. I do appreciate it. We listen to it every time, and it's one of those constant fixtures in the hangar every week. Looking forward to it. Just had one this morning, or was it Sunday? I don't remember. I started texting you about some parts. We'll talk later. E36, got to share. So thank you for coming on, and hopefully everybody will start listening to your podcast if they don't already do so now.
Thank you, and likewise. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure. It was a lot of fun and great to meet you guys. And for you, especially all three of you, if you have any questions or you want to bounce ideas or tell us any jokes, DM us, email us. I think you might have my, if you don't have my number, we'll share that too. But
right.
Thank you so much for having us.
We'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Bill, Jen, and Vicki.
So Jennifer's here. Jennifer likes to trick everybody by having Calvi.
She hasn't figured out how to get well, okay, she's a bit techno Amish, so she's having a hard time trying to figure out how to get Calvi off of her computer. She's like the potato girl.
That's okay because that's actually my son's name, so and I call him Calvi.
I think one of her children wanted it to be a Calvin and Hobbes thing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
But they got distracted towards the end, so they just went Calvi.
Yes, she is definitely that girl that will accidentally put the potato filter on and not figure out how to get it off.
Yep, that's me.
And referring to her as techno Amish, that is a very Pennsylvanian statement.
I didn't know that, but I was going to steal that term for sure.
Yeah, since I'm from the Midwest and I'm near that region, I know, the type of different communities and groups that are out there.
Jen, you're in a not normal position here. You're like
Sorry.
sitting up.
You're upright.
Okay, just so you know, because I am incredibly, in addition to techno homage, I just lost the cord to my computer. So I'm just preparing my other computer just in case if I dip out, I'll dip back in.
Sounds good.
And Randy, John, this isn't the first time. Just saying. Just saying.
I say.
She's got a lot going on.
I do have, it's, you know.
It's another Monday.